Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into Four Verticals Podcast, episode 107. This is our second time doing this. So, to sort of make a long story short here, if you're on the podcast feed, it really doesn't matter because this is not live. But if you're on YouTube, yeah, we had a stream earlier, just a few minutes ago as I'm recording this, and I'm live on YouTube again. So we did everything was normal up to about 20 minutes, right? And I went through the spicy predictions and whatnot, did the greeting and stuff like that. But I didn't realize we were muted on YouTube. So in lieu of just having to just completely start over and whatnot, on that original stream, we rebooted it. We're trying this again. You guys can indeed hear me, so we're not muted. That's it's fantastic. So we are trying this again. Apologies for that on YouTube side of things. On Spotify, like this doesn't matter to you, I guess. So let's try this again. Once again, we're going to have to do this all over again, so I'm repeating myself. But welcome in to Four Verticals Podcast again, episode 107. High atop a somewhat cautious Jacksonville, Florida. I guess I didn't mention this in the original recording, so maybe this is a good thing. But yes, I'm aware of that tropical feature here. Luckily, I will be traveling 4th of July, just up to the north. We will be drier up here instead of just being constant rain. So, yeah, I'm keeping on it. But nothing's going to develop, I don't think. It'll just be an area we're watching. But speaking of traveling, again, this is our second attempt doing the live show on YouTube. So, again, apologies for that. But as I said in the original recording, we will be doing a show on Thursday. It'll just be pre-recorded. I believe it will be premiere in the afternoon. But at that time, I'll be driving somewhere in southwestern Georgia, probably. That's as specific as I can get. So we'll make sure to have that episode out. I'll record that probably later tonight. Will not be live, but or tomorrow morning before the storms get here. It's not storming right now as I'm recording this and we're live, but yeah, so that's sort of the housekeeping notes for this weekend. Make sure to subscribe, like the streams and videos, and subscribe on the podcast channel, Twitter, you name it. So yeah, let's do this again, if you will. Second attempt doing this. Did I anticipate doing this? But hey, look, second time's always a charm, right? In most cases. So spicy predictions. So we started this back a couple weeks ago. We've had a lot of fun of it. This time we have a bunch of questions here, sort of predictions, if you will. If you need a reminder on the actual rating scale here, it's mild, could happen, warm, maybe, hot, slightly unlikely, spicy, unlikely. So that prediction is unlikely to happen. So let's go through these again. Florida State wins 10 or more games this year. I have this one as a hot on the spicy prediction scale. It's a hot, which means, again, slightly unlikely. Florida State is, look, if they were to win 10 games this year, that would be just insane, going from 13 wins to 2 wins to 10-plus wins. That would be amazing. Unfortunately, though, they do not have the roster, at least in my opinion, to do that. Yes, I know they had to bring in, Castellanos at quarterback. They had to make all these changes, coaching staff changes. You bring in Malzahn to sort of be the don't get fired coordinator, sort of help Mike Norvell a little bit, bring in his mentor. What could ruin this for Florida State is their schedule, even though it's an ACC schedule. Yes, it is a little bit easier than most teams in the SEC and most teams in the Big Ten. It's still a tough schedule for Florida State standards and what the team is this year. You get Bam at home. You have Miami at home. That's they're more talented than you are. Clemson, obviously, more talented than you are. And then Florida on the road. That's already 3 games you're going to be dogs in, for guarantee you that. But then there's 2 other games I'm also, if I'm a Florida State fan, I am very concerned about. One of them is NC State. Both of them are, by the way, weekday games. One's NC State late in the year, so you have back-to-back road games during the year, which is not fun, necessarily for especially a Florida team. Right, going to Raleigh, North Carolina in November, where it could be pretty cold. I know a lot of folks scoff at that, but it's true. That's not the best thing, especially for a team that's very fragile. Trust me, you don't want to be seeing that late in the year your special teams guys, your receivers, the smaller players, if you will, huddle near the heaters, and they look all pissed off and mad, and they're grumpy because they're losing. They're down like 27-2 or whatever. So you don't want that. But unfortunately, with this Florida State team, that could unfortunately happen. To have the NC State game, a place they've historically struggled at. But the game I am most interested in, the one that I think a lot of Florida State fans, people who are closer to the program, are more or less circling, It's not the Bama game. It's not the Miami game. It's not the Clemson game. It's not the Florida game. It's not even the NC State game. It's Virginia on a Friday night in Charlottesville. Don't lose that game. You can lose to Bama. That's fine, as long as hopefully it's more competitive and it's more of a sloppy game for both sides. Don't lose to Virginia. Because I think what the sort of thinking is here, and the theory that's been sort of going around is, look, the Bama game is what it is, where you can lose by 40, you can lose by 2. You're not going to win that game more than likely. It'll be great if you do. It's unlikely. You get your FCS team, you get your G5. Don't lose to Virginia. That's sort of the motto in the Florida State world right now. From people I've listened to and sort of followed, don't lose to Virginia. Because you lose to Virginia early in the year, and it's similar, ironically, to Willie Taggart's final year, 2019. Because go back to that year, they famously blew a lead against Boise State, and then a couple weeks later, they won't go to Virginia and they lose to a Virginia team that, in terms of talent-wise, was not necessarily on the same level as Florida State. At least that's, or maybe not that, but it's more or less a scenario where it's like, man, like Virginia's being Florida State, like that doesn't really ever happens. Don't let that be you, is what I would tell Mike Norvell and that staff. Don't let that be you. Don't let yourself be like Willie Taggart, lose to Virginia, and all of a sudden, much like that 2019 team, that thing just spirals out of control. Because it's going to get real in a hurry, right? Yeah, Miami comes to town, and you eventually get the Clemson game, and then you have, in the year with, 2 straight road games, and with the staff, again, that's very fragile, a fan base that's sort of on edge. Both your head coach and your athletic director on thin ice. I know a lot of folks assume that Mike Norvell is obviously on thin ice, but the athletic director may surprise you. It really shouldn't. A lot of folks in Florida State circles believe that if Norvell goes, Mike Alford is also on the way out as well. I don't have to explain it to you. It's kind of obvious why they don't want him to make the next hire, because he's, Norvell is his boy. So at least the guy who hired him is still the AD, is what I'm trying to say. And I don't think the administration there in Tallahassee would probably want Mike Alford to make that decision. So both of them are probably gone if this thing goes wrong. So because of that, the staff and the roster right now, that one's very unlikely to happen. Missouri makes the playoff as a second one. This one's mild. It could happen. Missouri, by the way, and this is just insane, and I said this on the original recording, they get 6 straight home games. So they do not leave the state of Missouri, let alone Columbia, Missouri, from August 28th all the way to October 18th. They're at home. The entire month of September, they're at home. First week of October, they're at home. August, week 1, that Thursday or Friday night game, their FCS team, they're at home. They do not leave the state of Missouri. I don't know if that's been talked about a whole lot, unless you've been breaking down the schedules like some of us have. But yeah, that's pretty insane. They do not leave. And it's a very friendly schedule too. I mean, they have your G5s, you have your rivalry game with Kansas. You should probably win those, I'd imagine. If South Carolina, revenge game, they come to your place. Then they get Bama at home. And if it works out here, right, sort of do the math here, and Missouri could be 5-0 in that Bama game. And Bama at that point could have a loss already, potentially. So how about that? Unfortunately, it's going to be a home. It's going to be a home game at noon. So it's going to be a night game, unfortunately, but whatever. But then it gets real in a hurry. You get your of course, your Bama game, Auburn, that's a revenge game, Texas A&M, Oklahoma. So it does get sort of murky after that 5-game stretch. But look, there's certainly a path here, right? It's a very Missouri-friendly schedule, which will mean that next year, I would assume, would be the opposite. It'll definitely be a non-friendly schedule for Missouri. So this happening, Missouri, winning 10 games, they have the right sticker on the helmet, right? SEC sticker, 10 wins, you're in the playoff. This is a mild, so that's almost a guarantee it's going to happen. If they make the playoff with this schedule, yeah, it's guaranteed to probably happen. That would not surprise me at all. This next one, though, would surprise me. It's Arch Manning does not live up to the hype. This one is a hot, not a spicy. I almost made it a spicy, but it's a hot. It's in the hot category, so just a tick below. I don't believe this is going to happen. I think Arch Manning will live up to the hype. I believe in Sark. I believe in that coaching staff there. I believe in the talent they've brought in, the talent acquisition they've been doing over the past 3 or 4 years. They have talent there. Arch has been able to take a year to learn the system. He came in spurts last year. He brings a different dynamic different than Quinn Ewers, even different than his own family members, especially Payne and Eli. Definitely more of a traditional dual threat guy. He can run around, he can scramble. So that's a different dimension that you didn't have last year. So, yeah, I mean, look, besides any psychological thing, which, look, that could certainly happen, right? We're humans, right? We can, go look at Jeremy Johnson at Auburn, right? Everyone thought he was going to be, the next all-time favorite player. He's going to do this and that, win the Heisman, get all these awards and stuff. Prematurely, then the season comes around and it's like, oh, this guy can't really play and he's not psychologically there. So that's a possibility. That's why I didn't necessarily put it at the spicy category. Almost did, but the psychological thing, we are humans, right? So that you have to understand that. So that isn't a hot category, but it's unlikely to happen. I would be very stunned if that does happen. It does not live up to the hype. I know there's a lot of hype out there, though I will say has quieted down a little bit because I think a lot of folks forget he's actually there. And I think a lot of attention has gone to other teams like Ohio State and Michigan and whatnot. And have Arch Manning, who's just been kind of, festering a little bit. Learned the system last year, sat behind Quinn Ewers, came in at times last year. So, I mean, it's his keys, and he has the keys, preferable keys of the kingdom now. So we'll see. Next one, staying in that region, though, not in the same conference anymore. Oklahoma State wins the Big 12. This one could have been a spicy one, too, but it's a hot. Reason why, because it's the Big 12. It is not the SEC. It's not the Big 10. The Big 12, in the words of Josh Pate, is America's College Football Conference, as it should be, as long as it survives, I guess. It's literally is just an accoutrement of teams, right? You have so many of these teams, and you could do a simulation on that college football video game, and I guarantee you every single year you do a simulation of the entire season, right? Go from the beginning of the year to the wins national title. I guarantee you when you go look at the results for the conference championship games, every year for the Big 12, it's a different team that wins it. Guarantee you. And if Oklahoma State were to do it, again, much like Florida State last year, they were just horrible last year, only winning 2 games or 2 or 3 games. I believe it was only 2. That would be a massive turnaround, right? Much like the Florida State prediction we just had a few minutes ago. The reason why this won't happen necessarily, again, even despite the fact that it's the Big 12 and whatnot, it's America's College Football Conference. There's a lot of, all of these teams are basically the same type of team, with just with different uniforms and whatnot, and school names and other things that are different. But Oklahoma State, in terms of talent attrition, coaching staff turnover, just where they're at currently as a roster and a program, they're not what they were 3 years ago. I mean, it's kind of sad because Oklahoma State in the Big 12, besides your big boys that are now in different conferences or different conference, Oklahoma State, besides OU and Texas, was the sort of model of consistency. Like, they were very, very consistent. Never had a losing season under Mike Gundy for a long stretch until last year. Always great. Always had tough teams to play. Just last year was just different. They had what they thought was a good enough roster was not. Despite having Ollie Gordon, their offensive line was complete trash last year. Quarterback play was whoop. Defense, whoop. Just a very gross product out there in Stillwater. It's just, I don't know. I mean, I don't believe Mike Gundy is going to be like, he sort of just accumulated so much equity with the folks over there in Stillwater in that region to where, look, if they have another bad season, he's not going to get fired necessarily. But, hey, just a coaching change in general, I could see it happening. I could see him resigning or retiring. I do believe there is a sense that the program has gone very stale and it's not going in a very positive direction. So, again, despite the fact it is Big 12, America's College Football Conference, don't foresee this happening. I say this, and then come December when we start revisiting these, it's, oh, yeah, Oklahoma State, Mike Gundy winning the Big 12 again? Like, how did that happen? Yeah, so it's not something I believe will happen, but then again, it is the Big 12, so you never know. Last one here, Georgia Tech wins the ACC. This could definitely happen. It's a mild, the lowest category we have here. Georgia Tech is a team that I have been ringing the bell on. Josh Pate's been ringing the bell on. We've been sort of, I guess, parading them as a team that folks are not talking about. But come December, they go, "Oh, how did this happen?" Well, you should be watching our shows, right? Should be paying attention. There's signal, right? There's always signal to these things, and we're seeing it again. Much like Louisville a couple years ago, Syracuse last year. There's always this signal of these teams, and no one's really talking about. Washington's number one too this year. That you just look at the roster, look at their schedule. There's opportunities. No one's guaranteeing you anything. No one's guaranteeing that Brent Key and Georgia Tech are going to lift that trophy there in Charlotte and they're going to go march their way to the playoff. No, I'm not guaranteeing that, but there's a good chance. There's a really good chance. They do have a really good team. Canes King is coming back. Most of their roster, besides a couple of guys like Eric Singleton, I know he's at Auburn now. That's not like a soul-crushing loss, but it is a loss for them. That hurts a little bit. But if Haynes King, if he can just perform the way he did last year, limited turnovers, doesn't become a mess at quarterback and doesn't melt down, as long as he plays within the program, plays within the system, if they get that Clemson game at home early. Now, again, unfortunately, it's a noon game, so wish it was a night game at Bobby Dodd Stadium, but it's not. But it's still an opportunity, though, right? It's an opportunity, especially if Clemson wins that LSU game and they're riding high and they're probably a top 2 team because, again, that Texas-Ohio State game also happens at that same day. So someone's going to have to move up. The winner of that Clemson LSU game is going to move up probably to the number 2 spot. I would imagine that if Clemson is really riding high going to that Georgia Tech game, that's the classic spring the trap, get the police spikes out, pop the tires kind of moment for Clemson. And I think Georgia Tech can do that. They did it last year and almost did it a few times. They did it against LSU, Florida State. They did it against Miami. Almost did it versus Georgia. This is a team that is very slowly sort of growing into a trendy pick. I think a lot of folks are now starting to hop onto it. But look, me and Josh Pete were early on this. We'll give Josh some credit here. He was paid. He was earlier than I am. But once he started talking about it, I was like, yeah, I can certainly buy into that. Georgia Tech being a very good team this year. And sucks that they don't have that Georgia game on campus. It's in Atlanta, but of course it's in freaking Missouri-Spring City. I mean, it's not like Bobby Dodd Stadium's not good enough for that game, I guess. Okay. Anyway, but yeah, that's spicy predictions there. Again, some of these, look, I could definitely make the case for that Oklahoma State one being a spicy prediction. I know a lot of you folks would argue with me in the comments and whatnot, but I agree with you to a certain extent. But again, because of the Big 12, knock it just a little bit. It could, it could still happen. And there's always that belief out there that any team in the Big 12, if you're, not named, the really bad teams, Houston, Arizona, there's always a chance. There's always a chance, but it's very low. I am going to get a drink of water because, one, we just finished that segment, about 18 minutes long, and we literally recorded a 20-minute show before this show. So I think I deserve some water here. We'll get back here in just a second. Again, thank you guys for tuning in just to make sure we are indeed recording on all of our platforms here. We are, so that's fantastic. Again, I don't know what happened. I swore I was recording on the YouTube on the Streamlabs, and it was silent. So if anyone was confused why that first stream was silent, that is why. So apologies for that. That was a very weird, a very rare mistake for this show to have. 2025 team record projection. We've been doing these for the past number of months now. We started this back in May, did it throughout June. We're continuing now. We did Georgia last week on the last show. It, of course, would be ironic for us to do their arrival in the ACC. Clemson, not Georgia Tech, but Clemson. Clemson's the other one. They played last year. They don't play this year. Hopefully soon in the future they will get a home campus game. I believe they do soon. I believe it is moving to a campus game soon, like home and away series, unlike it was last year, because they haven't had one, a Georgia Clemson game on campus in over 10 years, which is insane. Last year was a neutral site. So yeah, Clemson. This is an interesting one for me. So of course, last year 10-4, when you win the ACC and the playoff, another playoff appearance under Dabo Swinney, and necessarily make it all the way to the national championship game, but it's certainly a very, very good team last year, and it's something to build on. of course, we've talked about Clemson's quirks and the ways they've done things, right? Their negligence to the portal, their hesitantness, if that's even a word, or them being hesitant to NIL, things that are sort of warming up to now, that I guess including the internal coaching staff stuff, which I thought was dumb to begin with. Now they're starting to finally embrace that, hiring Garrett Riley a couple years ago, Lincoln Riley's brother, bringing in Tom Allen as their new DC. But I think some of their big storylines here, some of the things that I'm really focused on for Clemson. The first one's Cade Klubnik, right? Cade Klubnik, he's been there for a couple years. He's won the ACC championship game twice. He's, sort of the centerpiece, if you will, of Clemson's offense. People are putting up there as a Heisman contender, potential first-round draft pick up there with the likes of, Arch Manning and, guys like Max Johnson not Max Johnson. He's not playing football anymore. Garrett Nussmeier at LSU. So I'm interested to see what this looks like, right? Klubnik, Garrett Riley, that marriage has been very, very good for them. I have been very impressed of how they've been able to work that out. Not just think about this too, friends. A couple years ago, this Clemson team and most of these guys on this roster, they were losing to Duke. Like they lost the opening game of when Garrett Riley first came in his first year as the OC. Remember that game, guys, when they lost to Duke and before the pregame stuff, I believe it was Dave Pash and that crew. It was Tom Lukenbill was on the sidelines. He was talking to Tom, and Dabo was saying, "Oh yeah, Garrett Riley." Paraphrasing here, Garrett Riley is going to run the Clemson offense, and everyone was on the internet was rolling their eyes, going, "Oh, here we go again with Dabo. It's micromanaging your staff," which look, you should do that anyway. But I do agree that was a bit of a I shouldn't have never said that. They lose the game anyway. But since that game, really since that season, you've really seen Clemson sort of take off. Now, look, you had last year being what it was. You had the Louisville game, you had the Georgia game. As I think the Louisville game hurts a little bit more, given that I was off a bye week and you guys had to rest and you had the home. You had that advantage and you guys couldn't take advantage of it. So, look, I expect some big things from Cade Klubnik this year. He is really much. I don't know what I just said there. He's definitely improved. He had a good season last year. I think he's going to be great this year. I expect some big things from him, that offense. Clemson defensively. Again, Tom Allen from Penn State before that, Indiana's head coach, comes over, expected to be one of the probably one to be the best Clemson defenses we've had in a while. Despite the fact they've lost a lot of guys at the draft and people moving on, they still have Parker, the linebacker, the D lineman. They still have Peter Woods, who's been there for a couple years now. So that's definitely a good sign there for a Clemson fan. Though I will say, I'm not necessarily expecting massive overhaul or massive impact immediately, because I do think have new staff coming in. It's definitely going to take a little bit of time to, especially within an actual live game, to get that sort of acclimated quickly. But I do believe it will pay off eventually. Their schedule, though, of course, we'll break it down. It's going to be difficult to say the least. It's you have a lot of different challenges throughout the year. Roster retention and portal game, you just mentioned that. It's, Dabo's finally embracing that, bringing in actual new key contributors that will actually be doing a pretty good job. Another thing, too, of their schedule, when we're sort of breaking it down here, or at least before we break it down, is Clemson and Death Valley and sort of how they've been doing at home. And since within the last decade, their record is pretty good, 70-5. Only 5 teams to be in them. I believe Florida State's one. Pitt is one of them. Louisville's one. I believe some of those others are South Carolina, I believe twice. So those are, I think I caught those right, actually. Yeah, so it's Pitt a number of years ago, I believe 10 years ago. Florida State a couple years ago. Louisville last year. And then South Carolina, Shane Beamer twice. How about that? That was an athletic trivia question. I'm going that right. How about that? So, yeah, so they've only had a handful of teams, literally at hand, that have beaten you at home. So, you and Georgia, you're just below Georgia in terms of your success within the past decade. Their schedule here, as we sort of break it down, it's interesting. Again, you have that LSU game week 1. Everyone's excited about that. It's a home campus game. You get your G5 game against Troy. I'm just saying, last time they came there, they Wasn't necessarily pretty. It was a kind of a gross game to watch, ugly, if you will. And then this Georgia State game. Again, I keep on bringing this up. That's remember that game. That's week 3. That could be the game of the year in the ACC. And then it tapers off a little bit. You do go to North Carolina. It's Bill Belichick. I know everyone's going to be glued to that game because it's Bill and his girlfriend. Boston College, it should be okay. SMU, ACC championship game rematch. I think you should be okay in that. Duke, I think the same thing. Florida State, same. And then the end of the year, if you have your FCS team, sandwiched in Furman, then in between that, you have 2 road games. Louisville on a Thursday night, I believe. A Friday night, actually. It's on the road. That's a revenge game for you because they beat you last year in your place. Again, despite the fact you had a bye week and you had the schedule advantage there. And then you go to Williams-Brice. Unfortunately, at noon, not evening, but you go there to South Carolina. Very good team as well. They've beaten you last couple of times, or within the past 4 years, they've beaten you twice. So that's not necessarily and it's not an easy task to necessarily pull off. There's what I'm trying to say. I look at Clemson. I look at their staff. And again, it's a good staff, right? You have Dabo and you have Garrett Riley. You have Tom Allen. Again, you're using the portal now. You're starting to get bought in more into the NIL stuff. You're not hiring. You're not promoting from within anymore. You are going with beyond the boundaries of Clemson football because you can do that. There's no rules. I'm saying you can't hire outside people. You can. There's no it's on the U.S. Constitution to say that says Clemson can only hire within their program. You can go beyond it. Their staffs are really good. They're definitely them and Miami are the best staffs in the ACC. They're definitely the 2 programs that have recruited very, very well. Clemson, again, definitely the most accomplished program that conference over the past 8 or 10 years or whatever. 8, 9, 10 years. Their over-under win total from FanDuel is 9.5. By the way, FanDuel is not a sponsor of the show. When I went over their schedule, again, their staff's really, really good. Again, we just talked about a lot of the big storylines and whatnot. Defense, even with the new staff coming in, while I believe they will struggle a little bit, I believe they'll be really good again. Offense, same thing. I mean, the receiver group, by the way, so I should have mentioned this, is up there probably in the first time in a while they've actually had really good receivers. Antonio Williams is back. I mean, they have actually good players, and I think players that, at least at the receiver position, that you probably haven't had in a while. Which is, you have Antonio Williams, Brian Wesco, TJ Moore. Those are Clemson receivers that are the best ones you've had in a long time, which is kind of insane. And it kind of tells you how much Dabo and them have, I don't know if completely mismanaged this thing or if that's the right way to put it, but yeah, I guess you can say that. They have sort of brought themselves back a little bit. They have sort of, I guess, patched up that skill position in particular. So good to see that. But getting into the schedule, after looking at it for a little bit, thinking about it, I think their best case scenario is actually a one loss. Almost so hard to say. 11-1 is their best case scenario. It could happen, right? I mean, besides we got their schedule here. I should complete these windows I have up. Other schedules I have pulled up. Try this again. I think 11-1 is their best case scenario. They can certainly beat Clemson. I mean, Clemson can beat LSU. I don't think Clemson can beat themselves. Well, I guess technically you can. Besides that LSU game and maybe that South Carolina game in Louisville, even though I look, those are still dangerous games. I think Clemson, in terms of their roster construction, the way they're still recruiting well, but it's not been, it's not like top 5 or anything, but they still have a good talent roster, and I think the roster is a lot more superior than most of their teams in their conference. So I think their roster is better than Louisville's, obviously better than Florida State's, at least the schedule they have to play. But I do believe a one-loss regular season is the best case scenario. That's how much I have a lot of faith in Dabo's doing that staff, at least with Garrett Riley and mainly offensively. At least at the beginning of the year, I think they'll be really, really good defensively. I don't know. at least the beginning. I think towards the end of the year, I think they'll be quite good. But so I do expect that if there is a best case scenario, it's one loss in the regular season. I think that's certainly on the table. Wherever that is, it doesn't really matter. I mean, it's either LSU, Georgia Tech, it could be Louisville, could be South Carolina. Worst case scenario is actually 8-4, and it's pretty drastic from going from one loss in the regular season to 8-4. Again, going back to those games, right? The LSU game, Georgia Tech, the South Carolina game, the game against Louisville, right? Those are 4 losable games that you'll either be more likely favorites in or just be short favorites in. So, yeah, more likely. I think 8-4 is on the table too. Not to mention other things like injuries and maybe the defense is not up to snuff, if you will, immediately with Tom Allen coming in. So that is certainly in the realm of possibilities. 8-4 because that schedule, those 4 games are definitely losable. The most reasonable scenario for me. So looking at all of this information, you go through the roster, you sort of go look at the coaching staff, you sort of look at the schedule. I think 10-2 is pretty reasonable here. Again, the game's at home. Obviously, the LSU game, I think because of home field advantage, I would say you're going to be favored in that game, and I guess we'll see about it right leaning in August, about a month from now, when we start predicting that game, or predicting the games week 1, week 0. So you could probably win that game. Then after that, you just lose 2 out of those 3 other games, right? The Georgia Tech, South Carolina, Louisville. You can lose 2 of those games and win 1 of them. I still feel on the table. I think that's pretty likely, given how high I am and others are on Georgia Tech. I think Louisville would be pretty good this year again. And then, Jeff Brom's a really good head coach, very good offensive mind. Then you have that game against South Carolina, right? So I think 10-2 is definitely on the table here, definitely on the menu, if you will, for Clemson. So that's not too bad. If you're a Clemson fan in Spartanburg, South Carolina, or Myrtle Beach or whatever, or Charlotte, whatnot. Charlotte's North Carolina, but you guys get the point in that region, I guess. Most of you would take that 10-2 regular season, I would imagine. We're probably gonna have a short show today, I guess, as we're here. Again, I am monitoring that tropical system or feature that could be impacting us here in Jacksonville. Though, like I said, I'll be traveling for the 4th. So at least where I'm going, it'll be drier air because that front's moving in, and I'll be bringing in some nice continental drier air, if you will. So it'll be nice, a little bit not as humid as it is over here, thankfully. Again, I love you guys to be traveling, so just make sure, hey, as you're traveling, maybe, pop in the show, podcast feed probably, I'd imagine, or YouTube, whatever you choose. Hopefully, I know we've been behind on the Spotify stuff. Hopefully, before 4th of July, we'll have all the shows ready to go. At least today's show's recording will be up before then. And then, of course, we'll have the show on Thursday, scheduled for Thursday. So let's do some Q&A here, and we'll wrap up. A bit of a shorter show today. A couple of big questions here. First one, not necessarily tied to football, but kind of is. Thoughts on the announcement of EA Sports College Basketball Series returning and the continued impact of the College Basketball Series coming back, or being back. So if you guys missed it, now again, we're not a college basketball show necessarily. We don't talk about college basketball here. But if you guys missed it yesterday, EA Sports seemingly teasing, and it's been confirmed now by Matt Brown and some other sources in the industry, college football industry, or college sports industry, that EA Sports is indeed bringing back their College Bowl Series. Or, their College Bowl Series has been back. It's their College Basketball Series has come back for the first time in, almost 20 years. And in fact, when the game is going to be probably released, which will be 2029, so at least we'll get GTA 6 before then, I'd imagine. 2029 or 2028, that would be almost 20 years since the last game came out. Even longer gap in the College Bowl Series. This is huge, not only for college basketball fans. And look, I watch some college basketball, though not a whole lot. I definitely watched during the tournament. This is a big deal for you guys. I think you guys have been salivating at the fact of getting a college basketball series back. And I think EA, to a certain extent, saw that success when college ball coming back, and with the hype for the game that's coming out next week, the new version of the game. I think EA had really no choice here based on fan demand and the amount of money they made last year for CFP 25, what they're probably going to make from CFP 26, they're stoked right now. They are probably riding high, and I think the fact that they made so much revenue from last year's college bowl game, this was probably no brainer for them. I think the fan demand just added more gas to the metaphorical fire here. I think this is a smart move. Now, what is interesting is that the language from what has been revealed is that it doesn't seem like it's going to be an actual year-to-year release. It'll probably be like every couple years, which is interesting. Definitely a new tactic. So how about that? I'd imagine that the fact that that's going to be the case, I'd imagine that probably means the fact that you're taking this much time to, get the game ready. Obviously, EA has not made a college basketball game in over and almost 20 years. So they're probably obviously taking a lot of time to, get the physics right, get the teams in, which is even harder, by the way, because there's even more teams you have to use, which makes you wonder if they're going to include everyone, and then maybe just start out with the big conferences and then eventually move on to the other schools. We'll see. But, yeah, that's an interesting little tactic. They're doing every few years they'll release a game. At least that's what's been leaked out there. Now, the other part of this question is, the continued impact of the College Bowl series. Does this mean we'll get more college-based games? And I think this does mean something, right? I mean, with this college football game coming back and the impact it continues to have, and you're having my show talk about it, Cover 3's talking about it, Josh Pate's talked about it ever since it got announced. I mean, you're having a lot of these shows, and I've told this story before, and I'll tell it again. When that game sort of started to dwindle, when it stopped being released, before that, a lot of folks sort of treated that game as like their off season, right? Well, because as a Josh Pate viewer, probably shouldn't be saying that, but at least that's how they got through winter, late winter, early spring, summer, right? That was sort of the way they coped, or not cope, but just to keep yourself busy, right? That, your preview magazines, that was sort of your spring, summer, right? That was the way you lived out your, before the games kicked off in August, right? And when that game sort of went away and everyone sort of started to move on, either just by, various reasons, I guess for me personally, I said this before, my Xbox literally does not read a disc anymore, the 360, which was, the console that could only play that game. And unfortunately, the other, like the Xbox One, it wasn't compatible, unfortunately, or otherwise that would be, me 10 years ago, that would have been a complete dream to have that game compatible and still be able to play it before this new game came out. Of course, didn't know that. But what I'm trying to say is that the College Football series, when it sort of began to fade away and there was no new yearly release, a lot of folks began to pivot to shows like Josh Pate, J.D. Pickell, Cover 3, sort of using that as their sort of substitute for not having a game, because the game kept you invested, right? It kept you invested in college football and kept you, at least having college football around you. Now, when that game went away, in that long gap, shows like that and other shows that have come and gone have sort of filled that void. Unless you were, like me and had your Xbox live long enough to have it still reading a desk up until a couple years ago, which was actually ironically perfect timing, or you bought an emulator or bought a new one and was playing with the revamped version. Unless you did that, most folks were pivoting to those shows, and I think that's why you saw a lot of those shows like Josh Pate's and Cover 3 shows grow, because a lot of folks who were playing that game when they were kids, now with that game being away and not really being around anymore before it came back, a lot of folks went to those shows as sort of their way to get through winter, spring, and summer. So I do believe that that's certainly that the impact has sort of now rippled now. Sort of, I guess I'm trying to say is that the impact sort of went to them, those shows, and now those shows are now sort of introduced people to college football. Now they're now playing the game now, so it's kind of weird. I don't know, like a butterfly effect type of thing, but I guess even that, the impacts now. You saw the numbers it did last year, incredible numbers. The fact that EA is now willing to make a college basketball game. You're also hearing rumors about maybe a college baseball game. Now you're also hearing other things potentially. Now you have 2K, their Twitter account, tweeting out something yesterday saying, something along the lines of, campus has been pretty quiet. Is that saying, hey, is 2K also in this as well? Are they potentially bringing in a college element to do a game? So, yeah, I do believe that the impact of this this new age, if you will, of college sports video games because of NIL and revenue sharing and whatnot, is good. I'm very happy that now we are finally getting this stuff back to us that was taken away, at least for most people. Again, your Xbox 360 lasted long as mine did, and unless you did college football revamps on a computer, you didn't have a video game to play. You didn't have a college video game to play, and at least one that was most recent, right? I mean, other option you had was using the rosters on Madden. You had just imagine that, the Chicago Bears are supposed to be Auburn and the Kansas City Chiefs are supposed to be Alabama. I'll be honest with you, that was me a couple years ago when, my 360 sort of, farted out, right? And you had to use the current Madden games to sort of supplement that a little bit. And you have to just imagine that you're playing college ball video game, but you're just using NFL uniforms and stadiums, which is with the college roster. But anyway, yeah, I think the impact is going to be continue to be felt. Now, again, I do believe you will see other people, and you're already starting to see this, right? With what was it? I forgot what it's called, the Maximum Football, I believe. That's also sort of been inspired by the recent, success of College Bowl 25 and EA Sports bringing the game back. They have also updated their stuff, although I'm not necessarily sure it's the best game out there in the market, but it's another college video game, if you will, that's available. But yeah, I think the success and the continued impact of college ball games or college games in general being back is going to continue to be felt because, again, it's going to be introducing new viewers to the game. Again, it's sort of like for other franchises, like, for example, Star Wars, right, with Battlefront, which is, I guess, the next game. I guess that's going to come back, I guess, now. For EA, I guess that's the other game that folks are really hampering EA to come bring back, which is Star Wars Battlefront. By the way, the last one, which I still have, it's on Xbox One. I still play it now and then. Came out 10 years ago. It came out right after or right before Rogue One, I believe. So it was right around that time, like 2017, 2018. So it's been a while. But similar to that, right, with those Star Wars video games, that was sort of like your entry point, right? That and like the Lego Star Wars games back in the day. That was sort of entry point to, if you hadn't watched the films yet, you sort of get you acclimated right into the lore and be like, oh yeah, I can actually watch movies on these guys. There's other, pieces of media on these characters. Like, that's pretty cool, right? I think a lot of folks have probably stumbled upon college football the same way with these video games, right? It's like, oh man, you can, all these, animated CGI characters I've been playing with, I can watch them in, just a few weeks, in a month or so. Wow, that's pretty cool. So yeah, that's sort of the impact here. And I do believe now with the college basketball series being back, I think it is more of a signal the times are changing. The fact that we are now in the pure revenue sharing world. And look, again, this is not a college basketball show. But I will say, look, if we're still doing a show by then, towards the end of the decade, who knows? I mean, we'll do a review on it. I'll mention it. Speaking of reviewing, speaking of college ball series, of course, CFP 26 comes out next week. For those of you who have not seen it yet, of course, that the actual gameplay has been released. It's Bordeaux versus the Ryan Williams and of Alabama on the game. That was of course filmed weeks ago, but it was released yesterday. If I haven't watched it yet, I'll suggest go do so. That's also out. Of course, the game will be officially out to everyone starting next week for the early access folks. A lot of your content creators will be doing stuff early next week. And then by the end of the week, most of us, the normies, will get our hands on it. Of course, we have that whole weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So not next week, but the week after, I will, of course, give you guys my initial thoughts and sort of review on it, on how I feel about it, what I think of it. So it should be fun. I guess as we're at it, with looking ahead, of course, we have media days coming up. Superman, I believe, comes out next week. How about that? So I will try to go see it. We'll see. That Fantastic Four. So a lot of things are happening within the next month or so. That college football, NFL returns here soon. Camps, training camps, official camps start August 1st, I believe. So for a lot of teams. So how about that? Times are definitely a sign of things, right? We're in the dog days of summer. 4th of July, at least for me as a kid, right? You always imagine 4th of July sort of being like that midpoint of summer, like the top of summer, sort of the apex, and it just goes downhill from there. But so last little question here, so at the end of a little bit of and with a little bit of a fun question. What parts of college football history are often misremembered? Two things actually. One of them is less recent. One of them is recent. First one, if you guys don't know what I'm referring to, is just this happens a lot, right? It's the Mandela effect, right? Of people misremembering things and that they thought they'd happened, and it turns out it happened differently, right? It happens in any realm, right? In pop culture, sports, especially college football. In this case, two of them, I believe, are good examples of this, classic examples. First one is the one I get all the time, and this happens even with people who I know. The first, sort of the classic example of college football Mandela effect or misremembering is that Tim Tebow won the Heisman in 2008 when UF won the title. That didn't happen. Tim Tebow won the Heisman the year before UF won the national title. That was in 2007, that crazy year. A lot of folks forget that, but that's how it happened, right? See Tim win the Heisman in 07, then win it in 08. I believe he was a finalist, I believe. He didn't win it. So that's sort of the classic one. Everyone gets that wrong. Everyone just gets so confused that people believe that he won the Heisman in 2008 instead of Sam Bradford, which is not true. He did not win it. He won it the year before. The other one that gets misremembered a lot is in 2022, the Big 12 champ. A lot of folks believe it was TCU because they made it to the national title, and because they were still in the playoff, right? Well, that didn't happen. They lost in their conference championship game to who? I'm pausing for dramatic effect here, give you guys a chance to remember. If you don't remember, it was Kansas State, Chris Kleiman and company. Ironically, Will Howard, I believe, was the quarterback for that team. So, TCU, again, that's another one that people are going to misremember. Now, and I guarantee you in 10 years from now, they'll misremember it. No, they did not win the Big 12. It was Kansas State won it. That got them to the New Year's Six against Bama in the Sugar Bowl. But no, TCU did not win the Big 12 title game in 2022. That's a complete Mandela effect. That did not happen. So, look, this happens all over culture. It happens from now and again. But, just some reminders here again. Tim Tebow did not win Heisman in 08. That was Sam Bradford. He won it the year before. Tebow did in 07. And no, TCU did not win the Big 12 in 2022. That was Kansas State. Just setting the record there. Look, I know there's a lot of confusion going on, a lot of misinformation out there, a lot of quote-unquote fake news. Being as quick as I can, I'm not diving into that, lane, if you will. But, a lot of folks do misremember from now and again. It's good to remind folks that certain things that you thought happened did not actually happen the way you thought they did. So just putting it out there. We are not here after stream, but shorter stream than usual. We'll be back on Thursday, not live. We'll be pre-recorded. I'll be doing that either later tonight or tomorrow morning before the storms come in tomorrow. So, again, I'll be traveling on 4th of July. So, I guess I'll probably do the Happy 4th of July on technically the Thursday show. But, I guess enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. I know for a lot of folks it'll be a short week. I'll see you guys on Thursday. But the next live stream will be next Tuesday. So a week from today will be our next live show. It'll be our next live show. So until then, I guess I'll see you guys live until then. But I'll see you guys technically on Thursday. So until Thursday, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, Wednesday, and I'll see you in the next stream.